Guys, this is Jackie Cooper again with J. Cooper Travels, and today we're also on the podcast called Cooper Career Day Virtual. And the virtual podcast is specifically for those in elementary, middle, and high school, and even college who are looking at different career paths. And this is an opportunity for you to know about the variety of things that you can do in your life and the various skills that you also might need to develop. And Donna is an expert in an area of public speaking, and I want to welcome you. For those that might not have heard your earlier podcast, why don't you introduce yourself and share a little bit more about your business, because it's invaluable to anyone who is going on a job interview or even, looking at speaking in front of groups. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks for having me. So my business is called Red Stiletto, Get to the Point, and I do public speaking and networking training for entrepreneurs. And it's public speaking, whether it's one-to-one, one to a small group, or one-to-many. As I say that networking is one-to-one public speaking, but we work on public speaking on all the different levels.
So I know that public speaking happens when we're talking in front of classes, when we're talking with our professors or business partners, wherever we are. I know that you've developed a secret guide as to public speaking. And for those that might not be familiar with podcasts or YouTube, there is a block of information right above it. And I will be putting a contact link for Donna and her business, so that way you can always reach out to talk to her about this area as well as to use her services. So would you like to share any of your tips?
Sure, I'll share a few of them. So some of these are the kinds of tips that if you were to do one-to-one coaching, training, and have a coach, you would eventually, if you were doing these things, you would eventually get coached about them. But they're not the typical kinds of tips that you find out there. So the first one here is you want to avoid saying anything that could be interpreted as judgmental, condescending, or patronizing, because you really just don't know who is listening. You don't know what's going on in people's heads. You don't know where they're coming from. And especially if you're speaking to sell or to promote your business, you don't want to do or say anything that could put somebody off or deter them from connecting with you and wanting to do that business with you. Here's an example. I was at a conference one, and some of the speakers were over the age of 50, and they would, and more than one of them did this, occasionally make a reference to common things of past pop culture, like maybe from the 80s in this case, things that somebody much younger would not necessarily even have heard of, certainly not grew up with. Things like Archie Bunker from All in the Family, or the Coneheads from Saturday Night Live. You might even not know what those are, right? So imagine, and then what they say, the speaker would say, oh, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. Well, I thought that was kind of rude, right? Because then the speaker would just go on with what they were saying. And I was personally offended on behalf of the younger audience members. So what you do want to do is specifically make the point you want to make. And if you can't make it without referring to the past in a way that communicates clearly to everyone, avoid saying it. And I'll share this other one. Don't say you guys, use guys, or y'all. There's nobody in the room by that name. And, each person in your audience is an individual. And so while as the speaker, speaking to them collectively makes sense to you from the front of the room, it isn't personal to the listener, right? The person you actually want to connect with and impact. But people are used to hearing it. However, you can set yourself apart by avoiding using those expressions, making it more personal. You want to come from speaking to all of them as if you were speaking to each. And how you can do that is you can say, I would like to share with you today. Or rhetorical questions are good, like, have you ever found yourself in this situation? What do you think about the way you dress for a talk having anything to do with your audience? Or have you ever put your head on the pillow at night and asked yourself, am I doing enough for my clients?
Those are really great tips. And I know that 7 Insider Secrets is something that's very worthwhile. So definitely reach out to Donna so that way she can share with you any last minute thoughts that you want to share with those that might be trying to get into a similar profession that you are in, because your career has navigated a few different ways. And so this is not your first entree. You actually started somewhere else and ended up here, even though you combined all of your experiences, which is making you successful now. But where you started wasn't where you are now. So anything that you want to share from the entrepreneur perspective of, just how that path has been?
Yeah, I would say, well, how it was for me was that I just went with what drew my attention. I just went with that. And I didn't even always know why. Like, there is no earthly reason that I should have ever become a hairdresser, right? I say it's divine intervention because I was scared to death of people. That doesn't even make sense. But I was drawn to wanting to be a hairdresser. And then I was drawn to wanting to teach. Well, I found out the hard way that teaching and public speaking go together, but I didn't know that. Seems obvious, but it wasn't to me. And so I just went with what the next thing was that was drawing me. And in the end, they all tied together to come to be public speaking in a way that I could help others with.
I love what you were saying. The underlying message that I kept hearing is follow your intuition, follow your passion. And I'm sure it was scary to go from one to another because sometimes we don't always know where that's going to lead. But in taking that jump, great things happen. So, and even when we fail, and trust me, I have failed many a time in some of my entrepreneur ventures, you learn from it. And then what happens next is that you're stronger and you have more wisdom or guidance for your next thing that you're doing. So thank you so much for being on the Career Day podcast. I appreciate that. Again, everyone, feel free to reach out to Donna for her tips and also to connect with her coaching. Thank you so much, Donna, for being here.
Thank you, Jackie.